Well, hello again, everybody. I'm Rich Ehisen, and you are at the open mic, where every week I talk about writing and specifically about thrillers and noir and crime fiction and mysteries with a purveyor of those genres. And today I am joined by one of my very favorite authors, a fabulous writer, Tracy Clark, who is coming to us from the very balmy Chicago area today, where I think what you say was about 21 degrees.
It's about
today.
21, heat wave.
Heat wave, yeah, compared
Yep.
to some places in the country, it is. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us today. Really appreciate it. We're going to get started in just a second. Before I do, just a very quick reminder, please, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my interviews. I've got a whole bunch more coming up, and there's a bunch that are on the page right now. So if you haven't done that, subscribe, check out the ones that are there, and look for the ones coming up in the future. But in the meantime, let's get here with Tracy, because Tracy really is one of my favorites. Your Cass Rain series is really, really good. And for those of you, if you haven't checked it out, please do so. You have one coming up, the fourth, if I'm not mistaken, in the series, comes out a little later this year in June. Let's talk about that. Tell me what's in store for Cass Rains in the next novel.
Well, in Runner, which, as he said, comes out in June, she's tasked with finding a 15-year-old runaway in the middle of a brutal Chicago winter, which much like we're sort of experiencing now. 14 below, snow, slush, the whole thing. And as she's sort of tracking this kid who sort of run away, she sort of discovers that she ran away for a reason, that it's not a simple runaway case, and that she's not the only one looking for this runaway teen. Cass is looking for her to bring her back safely. There are other forces out there who are looking for her for opposite reasons, and it quickly becomes a race between who's going to find her first. And the consequences of whoever finds her could be catastrophic. So that's the plot of Runner. Of course, sort of buried beneath that sort of plot thing is the continuing emotional journey that she's sort of making with the return of her father after many decades, and how she sort of grapples with the concept of forgiveness as opposed to unforgiveness, and sort of the human sort of mess that we sort of accumulate as real humans, and also for book humans. So all of those things are sort of churning between the surface and the top, and I think it turned out pretty well. Now we'll see what readers think about it.
Well, it's one of the things I like about Cass is, in the mystery genre and crime fiction, we often see the same tropes over and over. And the hard-boiled detective ex-cop is definitely one we've seen a lot. What I really like about Cass is she's very human. She's not perfect. She's a little flawed, because all humans are flawed. How has she evolved over from your first book, which was Broken Places, right?
Mm-hmm.
How has she evolved over the course of these 4 books? You mentioned, this relationship with her father, but she'd left the force not on good terms, and she's had to grow quite a bit. Tell me a little bit about the evolution of the Cass Rains character.
Well, I deliberately sort of evolve her or change her slightly from book to book. When we meet her in book 1, she's probably at her lowest point. She's lost her career or given it up. She's sort of changed to another sort of way of doing things. She's lost her father figure, which is sort of, I guess, her last sort of tenuous claim to any kind of family. So I really brought her to a really low place. And then you have the decision whether or not you're going to stay there or build upon that or move forward. So I'm moving her forward really slowly from book to book, because I think most people change slowly over time. They don't sort of make these sort of drastic changes or lifestyle changes or whatever. Emotional development sort of happens overnight. It doesn't. We sort of grapple with things piece by piece, little bit by little bit. So from book 1 to book 4, she's opening up a little bit, but it's kind of like a muscle that sort of expands and contracts. She sort of has these periods where she sort of opens up a little bit and then sort of clinches back again into whole old habits. So that's a lot of things that's going on between book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4. She changes a little bit, not a lot, because most people don't. I try to keep her as real as humanly possible for a book person. And I kind of like that struggle, whether or not she sort of puts herself out there and opens a door or closes the door or opens the door just a little bit or, whatever. So I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic to sort of work with from book to book, whatever her case is. She still has that sort of spot in her inner self that she sort of has to grapple with these things. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that that it's messy and there are no easy answers and there's no quick resolution at the end. I might solve the murder at the end of the book, but this emotional thing that she's going through, that sort of carries through, which I kind of like.
Well, one of the other things I like to, a lot of times it's become more common to have a female protagonist in crime fiction. That used to be something you didn't see. Now you see it more often. But one of the things I never liked about it is when essentially you were a writer will just take what was a male character, make it a woman, and they have a female character acting exactly the way the male character did for all the years, that we would have in the genre. Mm-hmm. Cass is very much a real woman. She's very much a real, she doesn't she's not just the man who goes in and shoots everybody and kicks ass and all that stuff. She has a different way of handling things. How cognizant of all of that are you and wanting her to be really relatable to both women and men readers of this genre?
Very cognizant. I didn't want her to be Wonder Woman because, who is? She's a normal person. She had a normal job. She has a normal job now. She's a private investigator working the streets of Chicago. That's a job. That's a profession. She is not 250 pounds, 6'4". She's just a normal person doing a job in the city. She's not going to sort of grapple with some goon or something. She's got to use her brain instead of her brawn, what she has of it. And I wanted her to be a human being as much as I can make her human on the pages of a book. I wanted her to be just like you and me. She just had this sort of exceptional sort of profession that not a lot of women have. But other than that, she's got her problems. She's got an apartment building she's got to take care of. She's got people that she sort of assembled as her family to sort of replace the one that she lost naturally. And so she's just doing her thing. And this just happens to be part of what she does. And she gets afraid, just like anybody else would be afraid. She's not going to take unnecessary chances because, that's sort of a dangerous thing, even for her. She knows how to handle herself, but, she's not, again, a superhero. So I try to keep it as human as I possibly can, as normal as I can make her, so that the readers can sort of identify with her and engage with her and want to see how she sort of pulls it off.
Yeah, I love that. I think so. I've always thought it's good for, a character to show fear and concern and be cautious, because that is how it is in real life. My brother was a cop. I know, it's not a super. Nobody is Superman, and I always find those things to be a little unrealistic, more comic bookish. So I always appreciated that in reading Cass. Do you ever see yourself writing a different character or a different series? Is there maybe even somebody that's been a character in one of these stories that you think could have a breakout into something of their own? What does the future hold for you in that regard, and maybe looking at other characters you'd want to explore?
Well, I'm writing something different now. Book 4 is sort of a pausing place for Cass at the moment. I'm writing a standalone, my first one. I'm sort of pivoting from first person, sort of a voicey kind of a book, to a third person perspective. Still, the protagonist is an African-American female, which is sort of my wheelhouse. But other than that, everything's different. Characters are different, secondary characters are different, And it's sort of a learning experience to try to tell a different kind of story after I've told a series of these stories, over the last, 4 years. When I first started writing Cass, I knew instantly that was going to be a series. I wanted her to be a series character. So I sort of wrote her that way with this sort of entourage of interesting secondary characters to sort of fill out her little Scooby gang. On this one, I'm writing it just strictly as this. Whether or not it turns into something else, we'll see. But so far it feels pretty good. It sounds pretty good. I'm about 4 chapters in, and it's got a good feel to it. So we'll see what happens. In terms of the old characters, whether or not I can sort of break something out for them, I don't know. I think my favorite character with the Cass Rain series, besides Cass, is the pickpocket Pouch, and I'm not sure that he can sort of carry an entire book on his own. But maybe I can figure out something along the lines. But we'll see. Everything's
it's a good problem to have, huh?
Yeah.
So how has the pandemic affected your work? And I'm asking because I think at the beginning of this whole thing, there was a lot of concern and fear, all the unknown, of course, for everybody. But I think the concern certainly was, stifling the creativity, because, it's hard sometimes to be creative in the midst of such uncertainty. We weren't sure what it was going to do to the publishing industry. It looked like maybe it was going to be devastating for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that hasn't actually played out that way. Turns out people like to read books,
Mm-hmm.
During these times. How has it affected you? Has it done? I mean, clearly you're still working, but has it made it more difficult for you to be creative, or how has it affected you as a writer?
As a writer, not very much, because what does a writer need? Peace and quiet, a quiet
Right.
spot to sort of write and to sit there for hours and get it done. And that's what the pandemic has sort of given me. I'm working from home, nothing but empty space here. So sort of concentrates your time. The news is not the most productive thing that you can sort of latch onto, but you sort of teach yourself, or sort of find a way to sort of focus and to really get tunnel vision about it. And this is your writing time. This is what you have to get done. And you just sort of get it done. I'm sort of working in the journalism field. So you sort of work on deadlines. Nobody cares whether or not you're in the mood to write. This piece is going to be due on this such and such in time. And you either have it done or you don't have it done. And if you don't have it done, you have a problem. So I know I can work with deadlines. I can sort of block out my writing time. I know that's my writing time. It's the same every day. And when I miss it, I sort of feel it. You just sort of have to sort of stick with it. That's your routine. That's your job. This is your deadline, and you get it done. I don't have a lot of time to sort of navel gaze and, oh, I don't feel like it today, or, oh, the ideas aren't coming. Butt in the seat, eyes on the computer, get it done. So that's sort of been my philosophy, and the pandemic has helped out pretty well. I mean, because nobody's here, everything's quiet, and there's no distractions, and nobody's coming over. We're not going to have a party on Friday. I mean, it's just writing time, which is great.
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of agents tell me that they like working with journalists, and because we're all used to deadlines. I mean, we
Yeah.
live on deadlines. It's our whole life is deadlines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a working reporter or editor, deadlines, missing a deadline is the worst thing that can possibly happen, right?
Exactly.
And you're right.
It's doomsday.
Nobody cares why you missed it, right?
Nope.
They
You cannot
don't,
go to your managing editor and say, hey, I don't feel too well today. Can I take a pass on it? Because there's an empty hole in your newspaper. I mean, so the
Right.
thing has to be there. You have to get it done. Stop the whining. Let's go.
Right. Unless you have literally left your mortal coil, there is no excuse.
I was getting ready to say that unless you have died at your desk, that thing has to be.
But along those lines, let me ask you a little bit about your routine, because you mentioned you have the set time. Do you work with a set number of pages per day or a word count per day? What does your routine look like for meeting those deadlines that we're talking about?
I just sort of have a vague goal for the day's session. When I leave it on the previous day, I know where I stop and I know what scene's coming up next. So I have all of that night to sort of let it ruminate, to sort of figure out what it needs to be. So that when I get there at 5:30 in the morning, which is usually when I start, I know where I'm going to start, what needs to be done. Now, if I get beyond that scene or that couple of scenes, that's gravy, that's icing on the cake. But I know that I have those 2 specific or 3 specific scenes to get through for that session. Anything other than that is great. But then a next session, I know where I stopped, I know where I have to go, and then I'm off and running. So I just sort of segment it. It's kind of like trying to consume an elephant 1 toe at a time. You just sort of take it in little bits. You only have that 1 session or that couple of sessions during a day, and you know what you have to get done. Sometimes you hit it, sometimes you don't. Most of the times I do because I know that that's my sort of track. I have to get it done. I have to get this many scenes or pages or whatever done in that amount of time. So, every writer is different. Every writer has a different process. This seems to work for me because it sort of models my regular work schedule. This is what I got to get done. This is when I have to get it done by. Let's go.
Yeah, it does seem like it doesn't really matter whether you outline or whether you seat of the pants or whether you word count or page count. Whatever it is, find the one that works for you and stick to it. That seems to be the real key to more than anything, is find what works and just be consistent.
It might be easier if I were an outliner, but I'm not. I'm a pantser, and pantsers sort of flail around for a while and get stuck and sort of paint themselves into corners often, which I do. But that's my process. That's the way my brain works, and that's how I do it. But I guess outliners would probably have a more seamless track or sessions or a procedure. But I'm just all over the place. These 2 scenes I need to get done, and maybe another 3rd one. But I get it there. I get there eventually.
Right.
And I've never missed a deadline, which is great.
That is great, actually.
Not once.
We've seen a lot of attention in recent years to the concept of own voices in publishing. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's the idea of, giving particularly authors of color, writers of color, an opportunity to write, to actually write characters that reflect their own experiences. We've certainly seen some push toward that in the crime, fiction, and mystery genres. It's sad that we have to have a push toward that, but we have, and there's been some controversies, which I won't go into here. How do you see the landscape right now for authors of color, particularly in mystery and noir? And, are things better? Are things not really changing? How do you see the landscape right now?
I think it's getting better slowly. I think I read something somewhere where only 9% of published authors were of other voices, other than white guys or women. That's not a good amount. I mean, it's 2021. There's some really good stuff out there, really good writers, and we need more. We're got a little, a little foothold in the industry, but a foothold is not enough for 2021. There's so many voices out there, so many talented writers, which is sort of the goal of Crime Writers of Color, which I'm a member of. We're assembled maybe 100 and some odd writers of color or diverse voices, talented writers, award winners, award nominees, doing great things in the industry. So we're little by little sort of edging our way in, but we need more. It's not where we need it to be. We should go by talent and not by color. And we just need to be in there. The industry, I think, has to sort of change a little bit. I mean, I think there's this perception, or there was, that it was sort of taking a chance on publishing writers of color because there were no readers to sort of be there for that. So they didn't know how to sort of market it. There was this perception that Black people don't read, or people of color don't read in enough numbers to sort of make that worth their while, or to make it profitable for them. And I don't think that's the case anymore. But I think there's still those sort of gatekeepers who sort of have that in their head that they cannot sell it. Why buy it if we cannot sell it, if they're not going to be readers on the other end to read it? And I think that has to change before any of this other stuff has to change.
It just seems these things are so incremental. Um, you know, J.A. Jance, Judy Jance, told me years ago, and I'm sure you've probably heard this story too, because she tells it often, of when she wrote her first manuscript, and the agent wanted it, editors wanted it, it was great, but she uses J.A. because they said, well, no, men are the only ones who, essentially white males are the only ones who read mysteries, and they're not going to buy one written by a woman. So we're going to use your initials so they don't know you're a woman. And, this was, I don't remember what year that was. I mean, she's been doing this now for quite a long time. So it just seems like there's always a hurdle of some kind that is being put in front of people, whether it's, people of color, or whether it's women or what have you. So maybe the hope here is that even if these hurdles still exist, maybe they're getting smaller, and maybe the more of you jump over them and prove these people wrong, that the floodgates will open a little bit, and those opportunities will be there for more people. And so the question, I guess, within all of that is, are you encouraged that could possibly be closer maybe than it looked like a few years ago?
I am. I think that's happening. I can sort of see from year to year that sort of hold is sort of loosening. So we are getting through, but not in the quantities or the numbers that we need to get through. I think there's so much talent out there that's sort of being dismissed, and we have to sort of address that issue. I think what has to really happen is for the publishing houses to sort of diversify themselves. We shouldn't sort of be coming up against sort of just white editors or agents or whatever, because, we're never going to get in that way. I mean, we have to sort of diversify these houses. We have to sort of open up the floodgates and let the talent in. We're not saying just to sort of accept everybody just because, we're of other colors, but, talent is talent. Good writing is good writing. Good stories are good stories, and we should go with that. And I think it's getting better. I'm hopeful that it'll get even better than that as the years go on, and hopefully not too many years. But yeah, we're making progress. Not enough for 2021, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. And we'll see what happens as more people sort of step up and get in there and sort of change the industry and the game.
Well, I will tell you, I share your opinion. Who are you reading right now? Who inspires you? Whether in the mystery, thriller, crime genre or outside, who is it that right now is catching your attention?
Well, I read several books at a time, just because I don't have that much time, so I sort of try to get as much in as I can. What I'm reading right now is, let's see, Murder My Past by Delia Pitts. That's another PI series. Wonderful, wonderful writer. I'm rereading Wolf Hall just because I like the sort of Tudor period. So I just sort of read that for pleasure. And I just started The Sign of the Gallows by Susanna Calkins, which is sort of a historical fiction, interesting. So I'm reading those three at the moment. And then when I finish those, I will pick up another three from my TBR file and read those too. But there are interesting writers out there. Delia Pitts, I mentioned. S.A. Cosby, wonderful, wonderful. Cheryl Head, Rachel Housel Hall is one of my favorites. I love her series, and now she's sort of embarking on a new PI thing, which is great. Can't wait for that one to come out. So there are a lot of interesting stories out there, a lot of interesting writers. I'm anxious and excited about all of them, and I just can't wait to read it.
Aspiring writers are always told, read, read, read. That's the mantra you hear all the time. And so I'm always curious what you take from these other writers. And I don't mean like, what do you steal from them? I mean, when you read another genre, historical fiction or nonfiction, or I do the same. I read a wide array of stuff, all kinds of genres, and I think you tend to read more critically when you also write. So I'm curious, how often do you see things or read things and have that inspire something in your writing, even if it's in a different genre?
I can usually read just for pleasure. I was a reader first before I was a writer. I think most writers are. So when I read, I'm reading to sort of relax and enjoy it and sort of get into the story. Now, when I come across a sentence that is so perfectly written, I said, dang, I wonder how they did that. So I'll reread it maybe 2 or 3 times and sort of see how compact and perfect it is. And then, of course, I'll go back and sort of try to replicate that in my own work. But usually I'm just sort of reading to read, to see the stories and the characters sort of unfold. But that's how I do it. Other people, I'm not sitting there line by line, sort of wondering how they sort of worked out the plot. I'm reading like a reader would read. And if I come across something that's absolutely perfect, which I have done on many, many occasions, I try to figure out how they did that and sort of replicate it if I can.
Well, I like to end on what I hope is a fun question. I mean to be a fun question. If I could put you together for a conversation with just one of the following 3 people, who would you choose and why? I have tried to find you some well-known Chicagoans, and we'll give you a choice here between Al Capone, Mavis Staples, or Tina Fey. I could put you together with one of those 3 people for a good long conversation. Who would you choose and why?
I probably have to pick Al Capone. I know he's a criminal, did some pretty bad things. And if I had an opportunity to meet him, I'd have to make sure that there were no guns in the room, but I would really want to sort of figure out what the heck made him tick. I mean, this is kind of a serious thing now. He's the head of a major citywide criminal organization, and he's gotten away with it for decades. Judges, police, all in his pocket. I want to know how he got that sort of going, just for my own edification and maybe for my work too. But I would really want to sort of get into that head and figure out what the heck, because there was this criminal side of him. And then he had a family, kids, mother. I mean, he's living on the South Side, not too far from where I am now. Normal life, church on Sunday, family meals, the whole 9 yards. I mean, come on, there's got to be something in that brain. That is,
Exactly.
I mean, I want to know what that is. I want to know what makes him tick. No
Well,
judgments.
that would be fun, wouldn't it?
He's whacked off many people. That's fine. Just for that 5 minutes, just to figure out what the heck is going on in that brain.
And ask him why he chose not to pay income taxes, right?
And how he got away with that, and whether or not it still works in 2021, because it's hitting us hard.
Right. Well, Tracy, I want to say thank you again. This is, as always, it's great to talk with you. I'll remind everybody, if you haven't been aware of the Cast Rain series, make yourself acquainted. It's well worth your time. Runner coming up in June, I believe. They'll be out. Check all that out. Thank you again for tuning in today. Stay tuned. If you haven't hit subscribe, please do so. We have more coming up in the coming weeks. Tracy, stay with me just for a second while I take us out. And until next time, thanks again for joining us here on the Open Mic.
Thanks, Rich.